The Galactic Forgemasters Council had been meeting for 3 standard cycles without interruption, which was approximately 2 cycles longer than most species could maintain consciousness. The Vexathi delegate had already fallen asleep twice, and the crystalline representative from Quor had stress fractured so badly they'd had to be partially reconstructed during the lunch break. At the center of the amphitheater, Forgemaster Threnxkal, whose species had been perfecting metallurgy for 17,000 years before humans discovered fire, was explaining, for what he assured everyone was the final time, why certain things were simply impossible. The temperatures required for stable plasma containment, he rumbled, his voice like continental plates having a disagreement, exceed any material's melting point by several orders of magnitude. This is not opinion. This is thermodynamics. This is reality. The assembled representatives nodded with various appendages. This made sense. It was sensible. The universe had rules, and those rules were clearly posted. Then Commander Jessica Martinez raised her hand. Threnxkal's 6 eyes, which had evolved to spot imperfections in molten metal from across a forge chamber, all swiveled to focus on the human. She was young by council standards, barely 60 rotations around her star, and she'd been invited to the Forgemasters Council only because humanity had recently been admitted to the Galactic Technical Collective. Standard procedure. A courtesy, really. No one expected the newest species to contribute anything meaningful. Yes, Commander? Threnxkal's tone suggested he was already regretting acknowledging her existence. Right. So, quick question, Jessica said, standing up. She was wearing what the other species had learned to recognize as a human's working uniform, which apparently meant it had pockets, and those pockets were definitely full of things that probably shouldn't be in a formal council chamber. When you say no material can hold plasma, do you mean like no material at all? Because that seems like a pretty absolute statement, and we humans have this thing about absolute statements. They make us itchy. It is not an absolute statement, Threnxkal replied with the patience of someone explaining gravity to a particularly dim asteroid. It is a physical law. Plasma is matter in a state of such high energy that it will transfer that energy to any container, causing said container to fail, catastrophically. Right, totally following you, Jessica said, nodding in a way that suggested she was absolutely not following him or, more worryingly, was following him but disagreed entirely. But here's the thing, we've been doing this thing on Earth for like ages now where we contain plasma all the time. We call it various things, plasma torches, fusion reactors, also the sun. The sun is constantly containing its own plasma, though I'll grant you the sun has the advantage of being absolutely massive and not caring about OSHA regulations. The chamber erupted in chittering, humming, and what might have been laughter from the species that had laughter. The crystalline delegate stopped mid-fracture. Threnxkal's primary manipulator appendages clenched, which his species did when they were attempting not to throw something heavy at something fragile. Commander, your star is held together by gravity. That is not containment, that is celestial mechanics. As for your supposed plasma containment devices, I assure you, you are either mistaken about what you have achieved, or you are about to explain that humans have somehow violated several fundamental laws of physics. Oh, we definitely haven't violated them, Jessica said cheerfully. We've just sort of ignored them? No, that's not right either. We've politely worked around them, like when someone says you can't get into a nightclub but you know the guy at the back door. Physics is the guy at the back door and we bring him pizza. That metaphor makes no sense, observed Ambassador Tel-Shai of the Luminous Concordat, whose species communicated primarily through color changes and had only recently figured out audible speech. They were still working on sarcasm detection. Yeah, I know, I'm terrible at metaphors, Jessica admitted. Let me just show you instead. Do you guys have a forge chamber I can use? Preferably one that you don't mind if things get a little exciting. And by exciting I mean potentially explosive, but in a controlled way. Mostly controlled, we'll say 60-40 on the control versus excitement ratio. Threnxkal made a sound like a planet sighing. The demonstration forges are available. However, I must warn you, Commander, claiming to achieve plasma containment and then failing spectacularly will not reflect well on humanity's application for advanced manufacturing credentials. Oh, don't worry, Jessica said, grinning in a way that made several species instinctively check their evacuation routes. I'm not going to contain plasma in a forge. That would be boring. I'm going to contain it in something way less impressive, which is kind of the whole point. 20 minutes later, the entire Forgemaster's Council had relocated to Demonstration Chamber 7, which was designed to withstand catastrophic failures of experimental metallurgy. The walls were lined with force fields, blast shields, and what humans would recognize as the alien equivalent of those signs that say, "It has been 0 days since our last accident." Jessica stood at the center of the chamber with a large human-manufactured container that looked suspiciously like the cargo boxes she'd brought with her to the station. "Okay," she announced, "so here's the deal. You're all correct that plasma is incredibly hot and will definitely mess up most materials. However, and this is crucial, most is not the same as all. Humans learned a long time ago that if you can't build a container strong enough to hold something, you build a container smart enough to hold something." She pulled out a device that looked like someone had taken a perfectly good piece of technology and then let a human engineer get creative with it. Which, to be fair, was exactly what had happened. "This," she said, holding it up, "is a plasma torch, consumer grade. You can buy this at hardware stores on Earth. We use them to cut metal, weld stuff, and occasionally to show off at parties, which is usually when someone loses an eyebrow." Threnxkal leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued despite his skepticism. A portable plasma generation device? Impossible. The power requirements alone would... Jessica triggered the device. A brilliant stream of plasma, glowing blue-white and radiating heat that made the atmospheric sensors spike, shot out about 15 centimeters from the nozzle. Then she turned it off. "The secret," she explained, "is magnetic containment. We don't let the plasma touch the walls of the container. We use magnetic fields to keep it suspended in the middle, away from anything physical. The plasma can be as hot as it wants, and trust me, it wants to be very hot, but it's basically floating in its own little angry bubble." The silence in the chamber was profound. Several delegates were taking rapid notes. The Vexathi delegate had woken up and was paying attention for the first time in 3 cycles. "But that is," Threnxkal began, then stopped. His translator struggled for a moment. "That is exceedingly clever." "Right?" Jessica said. "We figured that out when we were trying to build fusion reactors. Turns out, if you want to recreate the sun in a bottle, you can't actually use a bottle. You need to use magnetic fields to make an invisible bottle. We call them tokamaks, though between you and me, I think the name sounds like a sneeze. Anyway, same principle applies to all sorts of plasma containment. Don't fight the heat directly. Just refuse to let it touch anything that can melt." "This is revolutionary," breathed the crystalline delegate, their fractured surfaces reflecting rainbow patterns of excitement. "Oh, that's not even the best part," Jessica said, warming to her topic. She reached into one of her many pockets and pulled out what appeared to be a data pad. "See, once we figured out magnetic containment, we realized we could do all sorts of fun things. Plasma propulsion for spacecraft, plasma cutters that can slice through basically anything. Plasma weapons, but we don't talk about those in polite company. And my personal favorite," she tapped the data pad with obvious glee, "plasma grills." "Plasma grills." Threnxkal repeated the words as if they were from a foreign language he'd never encountered. "For cooking," Jessica clarified, as if this explained everything. "We use magnetically contained plasma to cook food. Because why wouldn't you? It gets incredibly hot, it's super precise, and it makes awesome grill marks. There's this restaurant in New Seoul that uses plasma grilling exclusively. They do this steak that's perfectly seared on the outside and medium rare on the inside, and it takes like 45 seconds. 45 seconds. Do you know how many steaks you can cook in an hour with a plasma grill? So many steaks. I haven't done the math, but it's at least 73 steaks. That is not how mathematics works, observed Ambassador Telshai. Maybe not for you, Jessica replied. But for humans, when we don't know exact numbers, we just pick one that sounds reasonable and commit to it with confidence. 73 stakes. Final answer. Threnxcal was making a sound that his translator was rendering as confused geological rumbling. He looked at the plasma torch, then at Jessica, then at the assembled council, then back at the plasma torch. You're telling me, he said slowly, that humanity has miniaturized plasma containment technology to such a degree that you use it for meal preparation. I mean, we also use it for other stuff, Jessica said. But yeah, cooking is definitely in the top 5 uses. Humans really like food. We get creative about how we prepare it. There's this whole debate about whether plasma-grilled versus traditionally grilled food tastes different. Some people swear they can tell. Others think it's all psychological. There have been studies. The studies were inconclusive, but they were delicious. Show us your fusion reactor specifications, Threnxcal demanded suddenly, his voice sharp with professional interest. If you have truly miniaturized this technology— Oh, our fusion reactors aren't that small, Jessica interrupted. They're still huge. Like, really huge. Some of them are the size of buildings, but we're working on it. Give us another decade or two, and we'll probably have fusion reactors you can fit in a vehicle. We've already got the concepts drawn up. There's this whole competition between different engineering firms. Very exciting. There's a betting pool. The council chamber had erupted into what could only be described as controlled chaos. Species were clustering in groups, discussing rapidly in their own languages. The Vexathi delegate had produced what appeared to be a communication device and was frantically calling someone. The crystalline delegate was vibrating at a frequency that indicated extreme excitement or impending explosion. With their species, it was hard to tell. Commander Martinez, Threnxcal said, his voice suddenly formal. The Forgemaster's Council would like to invite humanity to present a full technical briefing on your plasma containment methodologies. We would also like to schedule immediate trade negotiations for this technology. Sure, Jessica said easily, though I should probably warn you, we're not the only ones who figured this out. Once you know the trick, magnetic containment, don't let the hot stuff touch the not hot stuff. It's not that complicated. We can share the specs. We're usually pretty good about sharing technology, as long as people promise not to use it to blow each other up. We have a form for that. It's like 3 pages long, 4 if you count the liability waiver. You have a form, Threnxcal repeated. We have forms for everything, Jessica confirmed. Forms are how humans maintain the illusion of organization. That and spreadsheets. Mostly spreadsheets, actually. Do you guys use spreadsheets? Because if not, your entire civilization is about to level up in ways you cannot imagine. This, improbably, was what caused Threnxcal to sit down heavily on a forge bench designed to hold several tons of cooling metal. You have democratized plasma containment to the point where you use it for cooking and administrative tasks. Well, spreadsheets don't use plasma, Jessica clarified. That would be weird, and probably a fire hazard. Although now that I say it out loud, I bet someone's tried it. Humans will try anything at least once. There's this whole thing we say, hold my beer, which is what humans say right before doing something that's either brilliant or catastrophic, sometimes both. What is beer? Asked Ambassador Telshai. Fermented grain beverage with alcohol, Jessica explained. We drink it for fun. Also, we use it for cooking sometimes. Also, we've been known to use it as a solvent in emergency situations, though that's not recommended by any official guidelines. It's really more of a suggestion, you know. Life finds a way, and humans find beer. Your species is deeply concerning, observed the Vexathi delegate, who had finished their call and was now paying full attention. Yeah, we get that a lot, Jessica agreed. But here's the thing. You guys have been perfecting metallurgy and material sciences for thousands of years, right? You've built incredible things. The forge worlds are legendary. Your alloys are works of art. But sometimes you get so focused on making better materials that you forget you can also just cheat around the problem. Cheat? Threnxcal's translator struggled with the concept. Cheat, work around, find alternative solutions. Humans are really good at this, Jessica said. We have this saying, if you can't beat them, cheat. No, wait, that's not the saying. The saying is, if you can't beat them, join them. But we changed it because the original was boring. The point is, when humans encounter an impossible problem, our first instinct isn't to make better tools to solve the problem directly. Our first instinct is to figure out if we can solve a completely different problem that makes the original problem irrelevant. She gestured at the plasma torch. You said no material can hold plasma. You're absolutely right, so we decided not to use material. We used magnetic fields, which technically aren't material. They're just really organized energy that we've convinced to do what we want through aggressive application of mathematics and engineering. Aggressive application of mathematics, Threnxcal said quietly, as if testing the phrase. It's a human specialty, Jessica confirmed, along with aggressive application of explosives, aggressive application of duct tape, and aggressive application of optimism in the face of clearly insurmountable odds. We're very aggressive, not in a violent way, well, not usually, but in a we will make reality do what we want through sheer determination kind of way. The Forgemaster was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I have been studying metallurgy for 400 of your years. In that time, I have seen alloys that can withstand the heart of a star. I have witnessed the forging of hull plating that has protected fleets through supernova shockwaves. I have dedicated my life to understanding how to make materials stronger, more resilient, more perfect. That's really impressive, Jessica said sincerely. And yet, Threnxcal continued, you are telling me that the solution to containing plasma was simply to refuse to let it touch anything at all. Pretty much, yeah. That is the most profoundly simple solution to an impossibly complex problem I have ever encountered. We're pretty good at those, Jessica said. There's this whole human philosophy about it. We call it lateral thinking. When you can't go through a wall, you go around it, or over it, or under it, or you make friends with someone who has a door key, or you convince the wall that it's actually a door. We're flexible like that. Your species, Threnxcal said, standing up with renewed energy, is going to revolutionize galactic manufacturing. Probably, Jessica agreed. Though I should warn you, we're also going to introduce you to scheduled coffee breaks, the concept of casual Fridays, and something we call team-building exercises, which are activities designed to make coworkers either bond or quit. It's basically workplace gambling. You're going to love it or hate it, and I genuinely don't know which. I am choosing to focus on the plasma containment revelation and ignore everything else you just said, Threnxcal replied. That's fair. The rest of the council session was unlike anything in the Forgemaster's 5,000-year history. Jessica spent the next several hours explaining various human approaches to what the galactic community had considered solved problems. Yes, humans used magnetic containment for plasma. They also used it for particle accelerators, mass drivers, and something called magnetic levitation trains that apparently just floated above tracks because wheels were too mainstream. When asked how humans had developed so many applications so quickly, Jessica had shrugged and said, "We got really motivated during our Cold War. Nothing inspires technological advancement like two groups of humans being really mad at each other, but not quite mad enough to actually fight. It was like a science fair where the grand prize was global supremacy. Very productive, if somewhat concerning in retrospect." The crystalline delegate had fractured again, this time from what appeared to be excitement overload. By the end of the session, 17 species had requested formal technology exchange programs with humanity. 8 had specifically asked about the plasma grills. The Vexathi delegate wanted to know more about beer, which they thought might solve some of their own agricultural processing problems. Ambassador Tel Shai had become fascinated by the concept of spreadsheets and had requested a tutorial, despite spreadsheets having absolutely nothing to do with the Forgemaster's Council. Threnxcall approached Jessica as the chamber was clearing out. "Commander Martinez," he said formally, "I must admit I began this cycle believing humanity had little to offer the galactic technical community beyond enthusiasm and questionable safety protocols." "Yeah, I picked up on that vibe," Jessica replied. "I was incorrect. Your species' approach to problem solving is unlike anything we have encountered. It is simultaneously elegant and absurd." That's basically humanity's motto. We should put that on our flag. Humanity, simultaneously elegant and absurd, has a nice ring to it. "I look forward to learning what other impossibilities you have made routine," Threnxcall continued, "though I suspect I should prepare myself for more revelations that will make me question my life's work." "Oh, definitely," Jessica confirmed cheerfully. "Wait until you find out what we've done with artificial intelligence, or genetic engineering, or zero-point energy research, or that thing with quantum entanglement that probably shouldn't work, but totally does. We've got a whole list. It's a fun list. Some of the items on the list are technically illegal in 3-star systems, but we're working on getting those laws changed. I am already regretting this conversation." "That's the spirit," Jessica said, clapping him on what she hoped was a shoulder. His species' anatomy was complicated. "You're going to fit right in with human research teams. We have a saying, ethics review boards exist to be negotiated with." "No, wait, that's not the official saying. The official saying is safety third, which tells you everything you need to know about human priorities." "What is first and second?" asked Ambassador Tel Shai, who had been eavesdropping. "Results and interesting failure data," Jessica replied without hesitation. "In that order, though sometimes we reverse them depending on how spectacular the failure is. There's this whole debate about it, very philosophical." As the council members filed out, discussing plasma containment, magnetic fields, and the apparently revolutionary concept of spreadsheets, Jessica pulled out a small device and made a call. "Hey, Director Chen?" "Yeah, it's Martinez. Meeting went great." "They're extremely interested in the plasma's containment tech." "Uh-huh. Right. So here's the thing. I might have also mentioned fusion reactors, plasma grills, magnetic levitation, and our approach to ethics reviews." "No, they took it really well. Nobody fainted this time. There was only one structural failure, and that was pre-existing. Look, the point is, I think we're going to need to prepare a lot more technical documentation than we initially planned. Like, a lot more. And maybe send someone who can explain spreadsheets." They're very excited about spreadsheets for some reason. I don't know why. "Yes, I'll file the report. Yes, I'll include the incident with the crystalline delegate. It was barely an incident. They do that naturally sometimes." Okay, I'm filing it. Martinez out." She closed the connection and looked around the now empty demonstration chamber. The plasma torch sat on a work surface, innocuous and harmless. A piece of technology so common on Earth that you could order it online and have it delivered the same day. She smiled. Somewhere out there, across the galactic community, species were going to start experimenting with magnetic containment. They were going to realize that half their impossible problems had relatively simple solutions that just required thinking differently. They were going to revolutionize their manufacturing, their energy production, their entire technological base. And humanity, the species that had been invited to the council as a courtesy, was going to be right there helping them figure it out. "Not bad for a species that figured out agriculture like 10,000 years ago," she said to the empty room. The room, having nothing to say on the matter, remained silent. Jessica grabbed her plasma torch, checked that it was properly secured, safety third, but still third, and headed for the exit. She had about 17 formal meetings scheduled for the next cycle, a presentation on fusion reactor design to prepare, and apparently she now needed to develop a beginner's guide to spreadsheet software for crystalline life forms. Just another day representing humanity in the galactic community. She wondered if the cafeteria here had decent coffee. Probably not. They never did. She'd have to introduce them to that next. After all, if humanity was going to revolutionize galactic technology, they might as well start with the important stuff.